Hey, welcome to the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum Show. I got some great guests. Just did a podcast swap of discussion with the AI Today podcast team, and I have Ron and Kathleen here. You want to introduce yourselves and your podcast because it's really worldwide known. So give a little introduction to your podcast if you don't mind.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathleen WALCH. I am one of the hosts of the AI Today podcast. We have been running the AI Today podcast. We're going on 5 years now, and we publish it weekly. We have not yet run out of things to say, and we have many more episodes planned. So we're really excited about that. On our podcast, we like to talk about AI today. So, not, the past about what happened with AI and not, really kind of forward looking with this idea of maybe of artificial general intelligence, of how where people want to go. And we also don't talk too much about headline news with AI. We really want to talk about, practical applications. We've done an education series that has been incredibly popular. We've done an AI failure series. So we talk about common reasons why AI projects fail. And we've recently been doing an ethical AI series as well. So, how to think about running ethical AI projects and why it's important, why it matters. And I'll let my co host introduce himself.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Ron Schmelzer. I'm also one of the managing partners at Cognilytica and a co-host at the AI Today podcast. And, when we started the AI Today podcast, a lot of it was, still very new to people, just understanding what is AI, what's it good for, what's it not good for, terminology, trying to learn about some of the applications of patterns. We spent a lot of time, we actually had a whole use case series of AI. And it's always interesting to find out the ones that people are really interested in. AI, of course, in healthcare and finance and all that people are really interested in, but then the ones in construction and in fashion, people have really been interested in when we talk about also the term AI has a lot loaded into it. And so we've broken it down. One of our popular things is called the 7 patterns of AI, where we talk about how AI, specific use patterns of AI, such as conversational systems like chatbots, recognition systems like image and facial and object recognition, also pattern detection for spotting patterns and anomalies, predictive analytics to helping us figure out future pattern trends for data. Of course, the popular autonomous systems patterns, machines doing things on their own with little or no human intervention. This idea of something called hyper-personalization, where the more you interact with the system, the more it knows about you and can make more specific recommendations and personalization. And of course, the last one is the goal-driven systems pattern, which is systems that can find solutions to games and puzzles and mazes and things like that. And when you dig into it like that, you could see there really are a lot of applications of AI, but also a lot of things to know, which is why we've never run out of things to say.
And that's like it never ends. And I'm gonna wake up Bubbles here. So I got Bubbles. So we gotta talk about making an AI version of Bubbles. No, no, that would be awfully complicated. She's a very complicated cat. But yeah, but we're not gonna go into that world maybe. But that's where everyone's like, oh, we're artificial intelligence. We're gonna do Terminator and stuff like that, right?
Well, the cats are still smarter than the smartest machine that we have is still not even as intelligent as a dragonfly. We talk about the
Mm-hmm.
dragonflies are pretty amazing. I wish we had computers as if you could do that, then you can actually build drones that look and operate like a dragonfly, and we're nowhere near that.
Yeah, and I'm amazed how the technology is there. But even with Bubbles, I'll say she got 9 labs for a reason. I'll say that right now. Everyone makes mistakes, and she's a classic. She actually legitimately turned into a bubble one time. Something happened. She got a hole in her fossil, and she actually became a bubble, like bubble wrap. It was so her name, and I'm like, why? So that was an adventure. But in this world, and the AI and the Agile world and how it combines, really wanted to get a chance. It's good to hear from people, think from an Agile perspective what people are seeing and experiencing on their side when they do stuff. And you talked about construction. Even construction people are trying to become Agile or use Scrum or different things to manage their projects. So I wanted to maybe to share with the listeners and the viewers, because now you're not just in form, you're going to be also in video form. So you're like, ooh, we're a video, so you're going to be video across the world too. Um, what do you think that how we can use AI to help application teams in and what other areas go. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that people don't necessarily realize with artificial intelligence and machine learning in particular, which is machine learning is the technology that we're using currently to make our systems more intelligent, is that these are really data projects. And that's like the fundamental core, honestly, of the reason why we even had to develop a specific methodology for AI project management called CPMAI, the Cognitive Project Management for AI methodology, because people are used to application development approaches, building code, testing code, deploying code, doing all that sort of stuff. But AI systems really are not about code, because the code for a chatbot is the same whether it's your chatbot, my chatbot, anybody's chatbot. It's like there's only so many ways to build a chatbot. There's only so many ways to even do image recognition. So what differentiates one chatbot or one image recognition system for another is the data upon which these AI systems and machine learning systems are trained. And you get into all sorts of problems when you don't have the data. It's not on the right quality, it's not at the right level, you don't know how to work with it, you maybe you have too much, and therefore you're spending all of this time trying to clean it up and do the stuff, or maybe you have too little, or maybe you have the wrong data. And so it turns out the success and failure of AI projects is entirely dependent on data. So you need to know how to run a data project, and surprisingly or not, many people don't know how to run a data project. And so with application developers, a lot of the how AI can help is, one, help them become data centric,
Yeah.
and help them from that perspective. But there's some other ways that AI can help, right, Kathleen? So.
Yeah, and I like to look at it, kind of two ways for this. One, how to manage AI projects, right? So Ron said, okay, we need to be kind of, understand how to run data projects at a very fundamental level, but then also how AI can help the team as well. And I think that comes down to knowing, what AI can and cannot do, what it's good for. But another thing that we talk about a lot, and not everybody always does, is get those stakeholders involved and figure out, really ask them what their pain points are so that you can figure out how to address that and solve it, and then see if AI can help with that, or if there's something else. I mean, sometimes just, a straight automation project can help with that, and we don't need to overly complicate this, or just a little bit of code, right? Run a quick program. So I think it's looking at it from both of those perspectives, and both are equally important, but you need to make sure, you're really understanding how to run these projects, and then also how AI can be applied to help.
Yeah, and I'll add 2 points. One, you mentioned your free class, and I'm big on some. I'm gonna go cert. It's like, why not go get and learn something? If you even hear whispers of doing AI in your office, your building, in your application, go take that. Go online and take that free class. Learn something so you have a basis from which to have a conversation. If you're not doing it, and with the big R word coming down the pike, you're hurting yourself in the long run, right? That's why we give this help out. And what you said about the information and stakeholders, I would even add from an Agile perspective, not just ask them, go see what they do. Go in their environment. I heard some of your podcasts where you're talking about they would field it, but they never knew what a grocery store was like before. I remember when you were talking about that. Go in the grocery store and see how it operates and what it is before you start building an AI system or robotics to accomplish that. And if you haven't done that, I always ask my system engineers, go document how it's done now. Go out there and visit them. And they're like, what do you mean? Go, go work with a platoon of military or a person working in a coffee shop. Just hang out in the coffee shop. Just code. If you're going to help a coffee shop figuring out, or a big giant, I mean, these things are huge now. Just go hang out there. Just absorb what's going on, right? So that's great. And do you think we're using AI to analyze the data that's coming from the customers? Do you think that's reaching these groups, or do you think we're using it enough to do that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the, actually, to be honest, the motivation for artificial intelligence is last wave, and for folks who may not be familiar with, but AI is actually fairly old. It's about as old as computing itself. Mm-hmm. Even goes before that. Turing, the famous Alan Turing, who developed the foundations of computing was, of course, the same Turing as the Turing test, right? So it goes all the way back to the beginnings. And so we've had AI for a long time. But I think, in terms of what really motivated this last wave was actually dealing with big data. It was big data that really kicked off this last wave. You had companies like Google, of course, and Amazon and Facebook who had this inordinate amount of data. And the challenge that they have was surfacing the right information at the right time. In the case of Facebook, of course, is making their little social wall work, and not just showing you everything, which would be impossible and not useful, but also maximizing it for whatever the outcomes out there. Same thing, Google with the search or the YouTube algorithm or Netflix on recommending movies. They were powered by let's try to find ways to find the patterns, to make smarter recommendations. That actually kicked off this last wave. And once we realized the power of AI for any of these patterns that I mentioned before, recognition and conversation with chatbots and voice assistants with Alexa and this and that, then people are like, oh, we have a lot of visibility in what we could do. So for those people who are looking at extracting more value with data, AI is a fundamental way of doing it. We talk about this thing called the DIKUW pyramid, which is a helpful construct. Maybe we can dig a little more into that.
Yeah, we talk about it. I mean, we obviously are very visual. We like to show things, especially as we're describing it to people so they can really understand. So the DIKUW pyramid starts with a foundation of data, right? That's the D. Then we have information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. So wisdom is, up at the very top of the pyramid is really human level understanding. But data is the foundation. We can't do much with data though, right? Like data on its own, we can't do much with. We need to be able to analyze it and extract, the information that we need. And so then we move up. And so we have various tools that help us with that. So then to get to the knowledge level, that's really where we can apply machine learning. And that really helps us get to that knowledge level. We are not yet at machine reasoning, so we can't get to that understanding. We're really kind of stuck at that K level, and then we're not at, wisdom, the W level. But it helps to understand kind of from that fundamental level upon which all else is built, so data, and then as we go up. And I know, Ron, do you have anything to add to that?
It's a fantastic job.
There you go. And I want to go into a lot of Scrum, a lot of Agile coaching, a lot of Scrum Masters. It's about how the teams interact. And maybe you can share some stories you have of where you thought a really good AI team, what do they do to make them so productive or as a team gelling together to get to that level? Maybe you could share a couple samples of what you saw them doing.
Exactly. So, we have examples of both highly functioning teams and non-highly functioning teams.
We'll hit the non-functioning in the next question.
Well, let's take a look. You always learn more from the non-functioning teams. But for the highly functional teams, a couple things that they do that they're doing well. There's this idea, and especially some of the larger organizations, of setting these centers of excellence. It's kind of a really more of an organizational construct for knowledge sharing within the organization, especially among groups that may not necessarily be talking to each other on a regular basis. And we have a number of large companies that we work with. Many of them, most of them actually are CPMAI certified, so they already they know the methodology for working these projects. But even sort of within, only the people that are really working those projects really need to know necessarily how to do AI. But there's so many other parties that are involved, people who own the data, even folks around data privacy, data security, they get involved, especially when you're trying to build a machine learning model that impacts the customer. And so the highly functional teams, the ones that are doing a really good job, are spending a lot of their time in sharing data, sharing information, sharing know-how, sharing practices, building up even case repositories where we applied this technology to this particular problem. We have this little formula that we've been using. We actually used to use for our case studies, which is, what is the problem that you're solving? How are you solving it now? Right? What's the problem with that existing solution? What is the approach that you're using? That's this new AI approach. What is the specifics that are, how are you specifically doing it? What were the outcomes of doing it? And then what are the lessons learned? And so when you look at this thing, you can think, oh, I have the same sort of problem. I have the same problem with my current solution, And so that sort of framework works really well. Now, you don't have to do that. You can do it in any way you want, but like that sort of sharing has been really helpful. That's what we've seen from some of our really
right. And to add to that, I think that some organizations, they are just like, my use case is so unique. It is just for me. I've never come across this before. And we're like, take a step back. And maybe if you just substitute your problem with someone else's problem, just a small little application switch, you'll realize that there's general themes of problems and that your problem most likely is not unique. Honestly, we've seen hundreds, if not thousands of use cases now when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
And they all fall within these general themes. So on our podcast with you, we talk about this growth mindset, right? And so you want to really be open to learning and understanding. And if you're not so closed-minded and you go, maybe if I just look at it from a little bit different lens, there's so much that I can learn from others and from these use cases. And that's why we're big advocates of use case repositories, because it helps you understand what others have done. We always say learn from others, right? You do not need to be making these mistakes yourself.
And it's great, and I'll lead into you brought up the centers of excellence, and I'll go where I see one failure mode from that, and then we'll get into what things happen wrong when we combined Agile and AI projects, and you can mention a couple quote Agile things. The one thing I see with centers of excellence is when those centers of excellence start getting into, we're going to tell everyone how to do their job, how to do their thinking process. They go to they might call it the PMP world. Though I love PMP. I'm a PMP. I like everything about it. But people overdo it and they don't understand why the questions are there. And I think they get into, well, everyone should do this, but they don't explain, or no one understands why you should do this. And that's where I think, and that. So that's just one thing I always caution people when they do it. They think, now it's my time to tell everybody how to do their job because I know better than anybody else. I'm like, okay, fine. So with that, what kind of things have you seen that caused the Agile and AI community to collide when it comes to building something?
Yeah, I think like the first area is that some things in the process require time, especially if you have this issue. I think the biggest one's, of course, data, which is that you don't always have access to the data you want. The data you want may not necessarily be in the quality or have the information you need, right? I mean, of course, everybody wants perfectly accurate.
Yes, yeah.
I know. I was laughing. You're like, it may not be in the quality you need. I'm like,
I know it's never in the
It's
quality.
most likely about 100% not the way you want it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would go that far.
Right? So the problem is sort of like sometimes the sort of the wishful thinking. I think it was Kathleen, you might remember this. I think it was Anthony Scriffignano on the he's the executive vice president head of data science at Dun & Bradstreet, and he was telling us about like it's the data you want, but it's like the data you actually have, and the challenge is extracting the value from what you have, because you'll never get the data that you want. And I think this is kind of where we see a lot of that head butting. It was something like that, right, from my memory.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just in general too, Agile is a very, maybe I was going to say understood, but I think it's a very well adopted, at least to the fundamental principles of it, right? But what we did when we were, looking at AI projects is we said, well, we need to add, they're really fundamentally data projects. And so you need to understand that they're data projects. So how can you take kind of both of these concepts and combine them together? And that's why we're, big advocates of the CPMAI methodology, which we had talked about. And I know that you had mentioned our course. And so for your viewers, they can go to aitoday.live/CPMAI to take that free intro course and maybe give them a little bit more understanding of, how both of the Agile and data fit together for this AI methodology.
Oh, and definitely. And I want to just think about what you said about people understand. I would actually offer, I don't think they understand the Agile concept. They know these frameworks. Oh, I know we have a sprint, and I know we have this, and we're supposed to do this. And then why you do it, they don't know the why or the how or what it's supposed to result in. And I think that's one of the things that really messes a lot of that stuff up. They get into, we're doing Agile, but you're not really Agile. Yes, you're doing a framework, and someone taught you the framework, but they didn't tell you why that framework should be working.
And I think that was actually even a bit of a challenge for us, because there's the things about Agile that are really very helpful, especially this idea of iterative sprints and thinking really in terms of going right to the customer demand and not trying to over plan and put too much into over documentation, which is why we have sort of this visceral reaction. Yeah. Someone tells us that these projects are 12 to 18 months. So like we just feel that that's not right. That can't be right. But I think sort of, we've been looking at sort of those iterative aspects and thinking, okay, well, what are the tools that already exist? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's like people have already done a lot of thinking about this. As Kathleen just mentioned, our problems are probably not that unique. So what can we do to look outside of this world, even the world of data science, which doesn't really have that much in the way of established project management methodology, even though we're one of these gigantic projects with a lot of data. To be totally honest, and people are just kind of winging it, which is scary.
Scary, yeah.
Well, you said the winging part. You'd be amazed. And Kathleen, you mentioned about the data. How many times I work with teams, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna do this." Wait, do me a favor. I said, we call it a spike in the Agile world, where you're just doing a little experiment. Now, a spike is only supposed to be like a day or two. It's not a 10-week spike. It's 2 days. Let's just see what we got. And every team I worked with, I said, do me a favor, write a little spike, just go check the data out, make sure you can get through all the firewalls, by the way, to get the data, because you don't know what barriers are to getting that, and then look at the data. And so many people that do this data analysis, like, oh my God, I'm so glad we did that, because I had no idea this is what condition the data was in. They're thinking one thing, and it was totally different from what they were told.
Right. Yeah, that's actually that's the phase 2 in CPMI is called data understanding. And there's actually 2 sides to data understanding, which is understanding what data you actually need, which may be different than what you think you need.
Yeah.
And then, of course, understanding kind of what's the state of the data that you have. Those 2 things need to match up. And in the methodology, you can't really proceed to the next step, which is data preparation. You certainly can't do model evaluation or development or evaluation or deployment until you have a fundamental data understanding. If the data understanding doesn't match up, there's this thing called the AI Go No Go, which was actually developed by Intel. I think it was like these 9 checklists, and there's the data traffic lights, and it's like if the data you think you need does not match up the data you have, you can't actually move forward. So do something, either change what you think you need, or change the data, or say project is not possible. Something's got to change, right? Yeah.
Okay. And I guess we're getting down to the end. I want to talk about your CPMAI certification a little bit, and your methodology you came up with. In that methodology, if I was going to go, would be things that I would see from an Agile perspective that I go, oh, this sounds very similar to this concept in that methodology that you came up with.
Yeah. So maybe first a little bit of a history of CPMAI, because there was actually a pre-existing methodology for what's called for data mining that had existed for about 20 some odd years. In 1999, the first version of something called CRISP DM was released, a cross-industry standard process for data mining. That's their terminology. It was like 5 companies, IBM and NEC and SPSS, and I think 2 other firms. They come up with this approach. And the reason why they did that is because at the time, if you remember, in the late 1990s, we were having all this data, but it was not very fast. So if I had to, back then, even gigabytes of data, let alone terabytes, was like, if I had to do an analysis project that had to, like, say, retrieve a bunch of information and do some sort of reporting, and I said I needed to do that in a very short amount of time, it actually took a lot of work to be able to do that. We didn't have the big data platforms that we have now. We hadn't invented any of that sort of stuff. So we said, well, let's at least come up with a process, because if it's going to take us 2 weeks or 3 weeks just to make that work, let's make sure we're asking the right question before we go through all this work. And so they came up with this methodology called CRISP DM, which is really truly a project management methodology for saying, figure out what the business understanding is, figure out what data you need, figure out how do you prepare the data. But they developed it, but they hadn't done any further work on it. It kind of stopped. Well, a lot has happened in the past 20 some odd years. 1, we have big data. 2, we have Agile. So it wasn't built in an Agile fashion. The idea was that there was, I think you had referred to it as, it wasn't Agile, but it was the other one. It was
Scrum of Fall.
Scrum of Fall, which is like, like within it, it was still a there was no iteration. It was just sort of like fixed. It's just you did a whole bunch of chunks of a fixed, a fixed waterfall.
Right.
So, so but about a decade ago, or less than a decade ago, we were actually doing work with a major bank and also with the major government organizations, because we had a lot of AI clients in that, and we found ourselves having to pull together the methodology because their time frames were not that long.
Right.
So what we did, we basically took CRISP-DM, extended it so it had 6 phases, extended those 6 phases to basically make them more relevant to machine learning. So it's around model evaluation, algorithm, things you have to do there. And then from that, we borrowed concepts from Agile. The couple of concepts we borrowed were the Agile team charters, the user stories, and aspects of sort of the Agile backlog and things like that, where we didn't want to reinvent the structure for thinking about iterations primarily. And actually, we're looking at bringing, maybe even enhancing the methodology even more specifically. I don't know, Kathleen, I spoke a lot there, but do you want to?
Yeah, no, that was a really great overview. And I think what's incredibly important, and even though CRISP-DM's been around for a while, and as we said, we enhanced it, what we stress, especially with CPMAI, is business understanding. That's phase 1. Right. And you'd be surprised, Ron talked about phase 2, data understanding. I mean, every phase obviously is incredibly important, but you would be surprised at how many people kind of want to skip phase 1 and then maybe phase 2, where they're like, well, we've just been told that AI is the new thing, or we just want to try it, so we're just going to move forward. And we're like, but are you solving a fundamental business problem? We had talked about when you're looking at how you can apply AI to project management roles, or anything, what fundamental problem are you solving, and is it going to help the business, and is the ROI, the return on investment, going to be worth it? Because if it's not, don't do an AI project. Once you've said yes to that, then say, okay, do I have the data that I need? If you're really running into these roadblocks, then don't do it. But if you are not, then go ahead and move forward. And it's not, you can't run an AI project if you're doing it this way. You have to adjust your mindset with the scope of the project, or, fit within the criteria that you have. So we found that when we're adopting different, methodologies, that people, I think, are bringing their expertise into this as well. And so as the practitioners are becoming more experienced and more educated as well, things continue to evolve and change. And so we're on version 6 now of CPMAI, and Ron mentioned we may be doing a version 7 that incorporates even more of those Agile concepts.
I want to add to that. I mean, that's the thing that I think has been very pleasantly surprising for us, because originally when we first started doing CPMAI and stuff like that, we were talking primarily to data scientists and technologists and folks who said, hey, I got to do an AI project. I don't want to burn a lot of time and money, so help me expedite it. But now we're spending more and more of our time talking to traditional project managers, folks who have a lot of certs. We'll get an email from them, and all of a sudden we're like, whoa, that's a lot of certifications in your signature. Like, wasn't expecting, you got the PMI, the PMP, you got the scaled Agile stuff, a whole bunch of there. You got some Lean Six Sigma, we got all sorts of stuff. ITIL, we're like, okay, so we're thinking, hey, these folks who are project management have a lot of expertise, have a lot of knowledge, not specific necessarily to AI projects, but to other projects. And we're thinking there's some synergy here. So we're spending more and more and more of our time talking to project managers, and we're finding more folks in project management. They might not have thought that AI and big data is really the future, but we're telling them this is not a bad career direction for yourself. So actually, a lot of times, even for CPMAI certification, because the certification you go through the exam and all that sort of stuff, we're finding a lot of folks in traditional project management roles, especially now you mentioned the big R, are investing in themselves because of the growth trajectory.
And one of the things with the project managers that I wish they would do more of, to be honest with you. And when I talk about, if you heard me when I talk about Scrum and Agile, it's about the interaction of people as much as this process and the grids and these steps you take. It's about what you do every day, because that's your most productive part. Sometimes I wish they would take an Agile coaching class, and I can plug some other ones, but everyone who listens will know what I'm talking about. And a facilitation class. How do you facilitate a meeting? How do you do it without being the one in charge? Because I'll be honest with you, where I see a lot of things with project managers, they try to be an expert in a field that they don't do 24/7. Like when I was managing a project and I had Georgia Tech PhDs in there, I'm not going to tell the PhDs how to do their job and design the things they were building. That's not there. And I think sometimes these project managers think their job is to tell these really smart people how to do their job. And that's where you got to watch that when we build these. Just because you have a framework and you have this doesn't mean you're the expert in how to do that. As I always said, I had one coworker who was one of my system engineers. I said he could build a tank in his garage. I'm not going to tell him how to do it. That guy was so smart, it was crazy, And by the way, this is Jerry. Hi, Jerry. Maybe make one of those robot dogs. Yeah, I know he's smart enough to tell me it's time to go. But anyway, so anything else you want to share with the audience here?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's like really, we'd love to hear from more project managers. Love to hear from more of you. I mean, like we make ourselves available. You can reach out to us. You can, first of all, check out our AI Today podcast. You can educate yourself. We spend a lot of our time just providing basic education. On the podcast, so you can listen to it. We have a glossary series coming up soon. We just kind of go through the key terms and we explain them. Even though we've been doing this for 5 years, it's like, well, we haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
that's another 50 episodes. So we're gonna do that. But and also, or just reach out to us. Tell us if you think you're interested in doing more in this field, or maybe you even want to help us. I mean, we are open to folks who are bringing in project management, Agile expertise, Scrum expertise. We'll freely admit we are not experts in that. That's not our expertise, Agile and Scrum. However, we do our experts in AI and data.
Yeah, definitely.
And we definitely see the whole chocolate and peanut butter thing here. It's a good combination. So, let's make everybody more successful. Let's achieve the outcomes we want. So that's what I have. I don't know, Kathleen, you have anything you want to add, but that's what I have.
Yeah. I'd encourage, all of your listeners and viewers to go to aitoday.live/CPMAI, take our free intro to CPMAI course. And then once you've done that, obviously we would love your feedback on, where folks think that they can apply even more value, especially with Scrum and Agile, as we are not the experts in that. Because we are looking to make this, even more robust. We can continue to iterate on it. And we have been, like I said, we're now in version 6. So yeah, I would definitely encourage them to just check out AI Today podcast episodes, check out the free intro course, and reach out.
Yeah, and I would definitely do the same. I always encourage my listeners to listen to, and viewers to go like the AI podcast, listen to that, see what's out there. Because everyone's kind of talking about, there's a murmur, we're going to do artificial intelligence and this is what it is. And then I kind of wonder if those people really understand what it is and everything like that. So, and then with our live, we have a dog. Jerry, you're going to take out the whole setup, aren't you? Anyway, so with that, I want to close up with we do on our show, a weekly Friday, the Friday fortune cookie episode where these Agile accountants come and give us a fortune cookie. And there's a message in here wrapped in secret thing. And these Agile accountants are those who want the velocities and want to check the boxes. And I'll be honest with you, some of the people that come over from the PMP world to go into the Agile world, they all complain about them. Oh, they want this, and they got to have that, and they got to have this, and I just want to build something, right? So that's what these Agile accountants, they send us a message, and in this message, we have to apply it to whatever we just talked about. So I'm going to read the message, but I'm going to do this because we can always use donations. So we have some lucky numbers. Go with the lucky numbers here. So we have lucky numbers 35, 25, 41, 44, 10, and 30. So if anybody wins a lottery with those lucky numbers, everyone on the show will be more than happy to take some, if you want to donate money to our shows, we'll take it. I don't think anybody is, and this is the first. So this is so I usually don't get repeats, but this is a repeat, and we did it on yours, and you can have this so you can think about what we talked about.
Oh, is it this?
It's the same one, and this is really rare. I rarely get this, but I guess with you, I get the same one. A person is born to live and not prepare to live. So based on what we just talked about on our show here, this in the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum show, how would you apply some of that to that? A person is born to live and not prepared to live.
Well, I will tell people that I'm not going to give the same answer that we gave on our podcast. So you'll have to listen to the AI Today podcast to hear that other answer.
Yes.
But I think, if I had to think about this differently, and especially with the stuff we had talked about here about preparing to live, which is that, especially if you're thinking about, if you're in a project management role right now, we just talked about that, and you're thinking about the big R, and you're thinking about kind of, what's going to happen in the future. You should take actions. Take actions to bring yourself to kind of where you think you might want to be anyway. Do you want to wait for the world to give you that kick and tell you, that you should be doing something different, or do you want to actually make that choice? There was an interesting news story that I saw the other day about how someone was fired from their job because they were on some sort of teleconference or Zoom or something, I don't know what it was, and then they decided they were filming a TikTok of themselves. And it was I don't know if you heard the story, but it had nothing to do with the conference. It was just they forgot to put a cup in their coffee maker, and the coffee maker was going and there's no cup, and they're like, don't I feel like an idiot this those moments. But they got fired from their job because the recording was going on in the background. And they said, hey, you can't be broadcasting our stuff. It was not intentional. And of course, I was very sad to hear that. I'm like, man, that's pretty harsh to fire someone for a job for that. But then she's like, you know what? I was thinking of starting my own business anyways.
Yeah.
And this was that motivation to kick me there. I'm thinking, well, maybe the world is telling you live instead of prepare to live. That's just another answer to that question.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that as well as we had talked about with the growth mindset, and on our AI Today podcast, when we were interviewing you, Greg, you talked about, interviewing millionaires, and not one of them has never recommended to read a book or to better themselves in some way, continuing education. And I think that that's the same thing. You need to continuously learn over the course of your life so that you can continue to be prepared.
And I'll go off that because I was thinking about go check out your free class on AI, and definitely follow the AI podcast, AI Today podcast, because you can't prepare. Sometimes you just got to do. And we'll think about AI later. Do it now. Just take the weekend, go listen to it, go watch it, go engage, so that you now can live what people are talking about. So with that, I want to thank you both for coming on board and doing this share of our podcasts and our shows. And now you're going to be YouTube famous. You weren't thinking about it, but now you're living in YouTube.
I didn't even shave for you guys.
That's fine. And I want to thank you all. And that was great. And I appreciate it. And you have a great day. And as I say, happy scrumming.
Thank you so much for having us. We really have appreciated it. It was a great time on both our podcast and on your podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you too.
Okay.